The morning sun had barely risen over the military training facility when Sarah Martinez laced up her boots for another grueling day. She was 23 years old, fresh out of college, and determined to prove that she belonged in the armed forces. The training camp was located in the heart of Texas, where the heat could break even the strongest recruits. Sarah had joined against her family's wishes. She grew up on a small farm, lifting hay bales and fixing machinery. The other recruits were a mixed group: athletes, dropouts, and legacy soldiers. Sarah was one of only 3 women in her platoon. From day one, she felt the weight of every eye on her. Some were curious, others skeptical, and a few were outright hostile. The military had opened combat roles to women, but Sarah understood she would have to work twice as hard for half the respect. Her bunkmate, Jessica, was a track star, and Monica grew up in martial arts. Both seemed to glide through the physical challenges. Sarah had farm strength, but running was never her strong suit. Long distance made her lungs burn and her legs ache. The drill instructors were tough, especially on the women. Sergeant Davis, a man with a voice like thunder, led the charge. He would stand inches from their faces and yell about how the military was no place for weakness. Sarah kept her head down. Every morning began at 5 to the sound of Davis banging on a metal trash can. 10 minutes to perfection or punishment. After inspection came breakfast in the mess hall, followed by the morning physical training. This was where Sarah struggled. The runs were brutal. 5-mile courses through rough terrain, rocky paths, and sand that felt like quicksand. While the men pulled ahead, Sarah found herself in the middle of the pack, pushing her body to keep up. One morning, Davis announced a 10-mile run instead of 5. The humidity was thick, and dark clouds promised rain. Within the first mile, her body protested. A sharp pain developed in her side, but she refused to fall behind. By mile 3, the downpour started. It turned the dirt into slippery mud, making each step heavier than the last. Sarah could hear the men behind her. They questioned why women were allowed in combat training if they couldn't keep up. Someone laughed about women belonging in the kitchen. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest, and she channeled it into her stride. By mile 7, her legs felt like lead. Every breath was a struggle. She slowed to a walk, just for a moment. Davis was there immediately. "Martinez, what are you doing?" he shouted. She tried to move, but her body wouldn't cooperate. "There are no seconds in combat," Davis yelled. "The enemy doesn't wait for you to catch your breath." He blew his whistle and called the entire platoon to a halt. The trial of Sarah Martinez had only just begun.
40 pairs of eyes watched as Sarah Martinez stood soaked and exhausted. For Sergeant Davis, she was weakness personified. "This is what happens when you're not ready for the real world," he barked, pointing a thick finger at her. The mockery spread. Brandon, who never believed women belonged in combat, muttered, "They can't handle it." Marcus joined in. "If you can't handle a run, how will you carry gear in combat?" The judgment was collective. Davis ordered her to drop and give him 50, right there, in the mud, under 40 staring eyes. By the 30th repetition, she collapsed face first. The laughter was immediate, sharp, and cruel. "Pathetic," Davis spat. He ordered the platoon to move out, leaving Sarah to stumble alone. She was a ghost in the rain. Alone on the muddy trail, every step was torture. Her boots felt like lead, her spirit felt like glass. She remembered her father's words. "Martinez women are made of steel. We might bend, but we never break. Bend, don't break." She repeated it like a mantra, forcing her burning lungs to take in the cold air. Then, a scream cut through the rain. Sarah's training took over. She crashed through the underbrush toward the panic. She found chaos. Davis was down, slipped on the rocks. His leg was shattered and the blood was seeping out. The storm had killed the comms. The radio was static. They were miles from base and their leader was in shock. Brandon suggested a stretcher, but there was no time. Davis was losing pulse. It was a death sentence. That's when Sarah pushed through. She didn't see a sergeant. She saw a weight that needed moving. She saw the farm. She didn't ask for permission. She reached down, using her legs and the steel her father promised her. The first step was a mountain. The second was a miracle. The platoon watched in stunned silence. Miles of slick mud. Every muscle screamed, but the mantra was louder. Bend, don't break. She carried him. Character isn't found in speed, it's found in the carry. It's found in the person who stands when others freeze. At the gates, she didn't collapse. She handed him over with the same steel she started with. Mission accomplished. The next day, the silence was different. Brandon and Marcus didn't have words left. They had only respect. Strength is about who stands there when everything else breaks. Sarah Martinez redefined the run. She was steel. Informed courage, disciplined intelligence. That is the Mitchell standard. Until next time.
Sergeant Davis was down and every second counted. Sarah knew they couldn't wait. Despite being exhausted, she made her choice. "I can carry him," she said. Brandon laughed. To him, carrying a 200-pound man for miles was insane. But Sarah wasn't talking about raw strength. She grew up carrying hay bales on a farm. She knew that endurance wasn't about short bursts of power. It was about how long you could hold the weight. Using technique over muscle, she pulled him across her shoulders. The weight was staggering, her knees nearly buckling under the 200 pounds of dead weight. 4 miles lay ahead. Her body screamed to stop, but something hardened inside her. She focused on nothing but the next step. Her father's voice echoed, "One bale at a time, Sarah. You can do anything if you break it down small enough." The first 100 yards were the hardest, but Sarah Martinez didn't stop. She wouldn't let them call her weak ever again.
In the theater of leadership, the heaviest burdens aren't always strategic. Sometimes they are literal. This is the story of Sarah Martinez and a climb that redefined asymmetric strength. The woods were a wall of wet branches and mud. Sarah's breathing was labored, each step a battle against the undergrowth that grabbed at her boots. Her lower back burned with a constant searing strain. Davis's ragged breathing in her ear was a reminder. A man's life was now a physical weight she had to carry. She planted each foot with calculated care. One slip could end it for both of them. In the geography of survival, safety precedes speed. Behind her, the chorus of doubt was growing. The male recruits were arguing, their low voices cutting through the rain with the sharp edge of skepticism. Brandon called the mission insane. Sarah blocked them out. Doubt is a poison that paralyzes the muscles. She found her rhythm. Left foot, right foot, breathe. Autopilot was her only ally. Monica stayed close, a silent observer of the struggle. "How are you doing?" she asked. Sarah's answer was a single gasping word: managing. Then they reached the incline. It wasn't a mountain, but with Davis's weight, it was a test of gravity itself. Sarah paused, gathering what was left of her strength. Brandon saw his opening. "Let me take him up the hill," he offered. For a heartbeat, Sarah was tempted. Her legs were shaking, the hill looked impossible. But she knew the cost of surrender. Giving up now would prove them right, not just about her, but about every woman who would follow. "I've got this," she said, and started up the incline. Her boots slid back, losing inches for every foot gained. Her breath came in harsh, rhythmic gasps that mirrored the pain in her lower back. Sweat stung her eyes. Halfway up, the mechanical failure happened. Her left leg gave out. She dropped to one knee. Brandon reached out to take the load, but Sarah shook her head. "No," she gasped. She closed her eyes and reached for a memory. Her father's voice, a martial arts master, reminding her that muscles are just tools for the mind. Remind them who's in charge. She stood up and continued. When she reached the top, there was no celebration, only the sight of the service road. The terrain was changing, but her body was already empty. They broke onto the service road, 2 miles to go. Her shoulders were numb, a blessing of silence from her nerves. She relied on pure balance and the mantra, left foot, right foot, breathe. Sarah Martinez didn't just carry a man that day, she carried the weight of expectation and the legacy of disciplined intelligence. 180 seconds of resolve that lasted a lifetime. This is the ground report.
Sarah Martinez wanted to accept the offer to stop, but something deep inside refused to give in. This was her test. She had started this, and she would finish it. It wasn't just about saving Davis, it was about the extraordinary. The recruits fell back. The mocking comments had stopped, replaced by a weight that wasn't physical. Respect had taken root. The service road stretched ahead like an endless ribbon. Sarah's world had narrowed to the few feet before her boots. 100 steps, then 3 breaths. It was the only way to mentally handle the impossible distance remaining. Davis had stopped groaning. Monica checked him. His pulse was weak. They needed to move faster, but Sarah was already at her limit. Sarah was already at her absolute limit. But somehow she found a gear that shouldn't have existed. She forced her legs to move. The extra speed came at a cost. Something was giving way in her back. Her legs were trembling toward total failure. Then a shout from the back. Tyler had seen something. Up ahead, movement in the gray. Lights cutting through the rain. Marcus had made it. Help was coming. Relief flooded Sarah, but she didn't slow down. Not until the medics arrived. The vehicle skidded to a stop. Medics jumped out, running toward the impossible sight of Martinez and her burden. The doctor's face showed pure shock. A small female recruit was carrying a full-grown man, alone. "We've got him now," he said. Her body had locked up. Her muscles were frozen into position, a biological statue of pure willpower. She couldn't let go. The moment he was gone, her legs vanished. She hit the mud, gasping for the air she'd forgotten to breathe. The mission was done. She wasn't injured, not in the traditional sense. She had simply pushed past every known human limit. Her body was spent. Her hands shook so badly she couldn't even grip the water. Monica held the bottle steady. This was the strength of the unit. Brandon stepped forward. Instead of criticism, he offered his hand. "Incredible, Martinez," he said. "He couldn't have done it." The doctor looked at them all. "You saved his life. 15 more minutes and he would have been gone. She gave him that chance." "You carried him? All the way?" He had worked with the military for 20 years and had never seen a feat like this. 130 pounds. She had carried twice her weight for miles after a grueling 7-mile run, a true miracle. As they loaded him, Davis spoke. "Martinez, I was wrong about you. You're the strongest one here. The ultimate validation." The doors closed. The vehicle vanished into the rain, leaving the recruits changed. They had witnessed the extraordinary. Monica whispered, "I knew she could do it. Farm girls are tough, they say, but Sarah Martinez was something more. It wasn't just strength. It was the geometry of movement, the discipline of every agonizing step overcoming raw biology. Sarah Martinez proved that extraordinary things aren't born, they are carried. This has been the ground report. Case closed.
The walk back to base was quiet. Sarah's body was shutting down from pure, unadulterated exhaustion. Monica and Jessica supported her on both sides, helping her stay upright as her legs barely responded to her commands. Every step sent shockwaves of pain through her back, but she refused to be carried. She would walk in on her own 2 feet. Word had already spread. Recruits lined the path, watching in a silence that felt heavier than the rain itself. Some faces showed skepticism, wondering if the story was exaggerated. Others showed respect. Sarah kept her eyes forward. Colonel Peterson was waiting, a woman impossible to impress, looking at Sarah with an expression that revealed nothing. "Martinez," she said, "the medics need to check you out. You may have seriously injured yourself with that stunt." Sarah wanted to argue it wasn't a stunt, but she was too tired. She let them guide her into the white light of the examination room. They tested her range of motion and asked dozens of questions. Her blood pressure was high. Her muscles were inflamed. "You're lucky," the medic told her. "Most people who try that end up broken. You'll be sore for weeks, but you'll recover." Back in the barracks, the silence was broken by Jessica. She knew the weight of the moment wasn't just physical. "You're either going to be a hero," Jessica said, "or people will say you were just showing off unnecessarily." Sarah didn't care. Sergeant Davis was alive. In the end, that was the only metric that mattered to her. Monica saw it differently. "You proved that strength isn't about size," she told her. "It's about determination and heart." Sarah closed her eyes, and her mind went back to the hill, to the moment she almost broke under the weight. She thought of her father's words, "Bend, but do not break." She had been bent to the limit, but she had held firm. Sleep was far from restful. Her dreams were filled with the endless road and the crushing weight of a man on her shoulders. Morning came too soon. The 5 a.m. wake-up call felt like a sentence. Every muscle screamed at her to stay down. But she forced herself up. Staying in bed would send a message that yesterday had broken her, and Sarah wasn't broken. Her movements were slow and agonizing. Jessica watched with concern, urging sick call. Sarah just shook her head. Formation was different that morning. When Sarah limped out to join them, the usual chatter simply stopped. Everyone turned to look. The base commander was there. Colonel Peterson rarely attended morning formation. It was a sign. The colonel stepped forward, her voice cut through the air. Yesterday, she began, one of your own performed an act of courage. She detailed the rescue, then paused. However, you disobeyed standard protocol. You made a decision that put your health at risk. Sarah's heart sank. In the world of tactical discipline, saving a life doesn't always excuse breaking the rules. The line was razor thin. Was she a hero to be honored or a soldier to be disciplined? That is the question we leave on the field today.
The rescue was a triumph, but for Sarah Martinez, the aftermath was a reckoning. Her body was broken, but her spirit remained at attention. Colonel Peterson was clear. Judgment had superseded regulation. Sergeant Davis was alive, but Sarah's choice had carried a terrifying weight. Recovery was a battlefield of its own. Muscle trauma and brutal therapy sessions tested her resolve as she fought to reclaim her place in the unit. Even the skeptics bowed. Brandon, who once saw her as a liability, now recognized her as the strongest soldier in the formation. In a quiet hospital room, Davis admitted the truth. He had pushed her hoping she would quit. Instead, he found the toughest soldier he had ever trained. This was the Martinez Protocol, a story of resilience that proved strength isn't about size, it's about the depth of one's character.
Sarah's recovery took longer than she expected. Her body had been pushed so far beyond its normal limits that getting back to full strength was a slow process. Lieutenant Chen warned her against rushing it. You're young and resilient, but you're not invincible. Push too hard too fast and you'll end up with permanent damage. The hostile comments vanished. Sarah became an informal leader, sought out for advice by recruits who had once been coldest to her. Brandon became a genuine friend. He trained alongside her during rehab, using his influence to shut down any remaining skepticism in the platoon. 3 weeks in, she faced the 5-mile run again, the same distance that had once broken her. Excitement fought with nerves. By mile 4, she found the rhythm. Her body was working as a unified machine. This was what strength felt like. She crossed the finish line strong with Monica and Jessica. It wasn't about being the fastest. It was about the victory inside. Sergeant Williams gave a sharp, rare nod. Good run, Martinez. Solid improvement. In weapons training, Sarah's steady hands made her a natural. Her focus on the firing range was absolute. Set Ramirez noted her sniper's eye, suggesting she specialize. But Sarah's goal remained the same, the front lines. I carried a 200-pound man for 4 miles. I can handle a 60-pound pack. Ramirez could only respect the logic. Months passed. The girl who struggled was gone, replaced by a confident, capable soldier who knew her true worth. The final week brought the ultimate tests. Sarah approached them with calm, disciplined confidence. She was ready. She maxed out every requirement, push-ups, sit-ups, and a 2-mile run in under 15 minutes. Room to spare. The obstacle course felt almost easy. She moved with a mastery of her body's geometry and timing. Expert marksman qualification. Her aim was cold, precise, and unwavering under the pressure of evaluation. In hand-to-hand combat, she used leverage and speed to hold her own against the giants. Technical precision over raw strength. The final test? A 12-mile ruck march with 50 pounds of gear. A test of the Martinez Protocol. The march was about to begin.
The ruck march began before dawn. A final test, not just of strength, but of the calculated geometry of endurance. Sarah Martinez stood ready. Martinez shouldered her 50-pound pack, checking her gear with technical precision, water, rations, and ammunition. A heavy load, but an inanimate one. The platoon set off. This was an individual test. No helping, no sharing. Only the merit of the individual against the miles of unforgiving terrain. The first few miles were flat. Sarah fell into a disciplined cadence. Left foot, right foot, breathe. a rhythm forged through months of adaptive training. By mile 5, the attrition began. Recruits slowed to a shuffle, faces flushed with exhaustion. Sarah remembered being there once. Now she was the pacer. The sun rose and the temperature climbed. Sweat soaked her uniform, and the pack straps became a source of manageable analytical pain. She pushed on. At mile 9, the trail turned upward. These hills were the separator. This was where preparation met the mountain, and only the disciplined would survive. She attacked the first hill, leaning forward to compensate for the center of gravity. Her legs burned, but they were ready. Her body was a machine. Halfway up, she reached Brandon. He was braking. "You've got this, Brandon. Just keep moving," she said, refusing to break her own mechanical rhythm. At the summit, the finish line appeared. 1 mile left. She did the impossible, picking up speed, actually running the final mile with the full 50-pound load. She crossed with 15 minutes to spare. 8th out of 40, the first woman, a definitive statement of capability and a legacy of mentorship realized. She watched the others come in. Brandon collapsed with minutes left. Staff Sergeant Williams approached. He saw the change in her. That day had changed everything. The next morning was graduation, a transition from recruit to soldier, a legacy of discipline and mentorship coming to its final formal fruition. The ceremony was traditional, recruits in perfect formation. Colonel Peterson spoke of honor and duty. Then, the name Martinez was announced to the crowd. Peterson added a commendation for exceptional courage and strength. The applause was thunderous, a validation of the Martinez protocol by her peers. She caught her father's eye. He was clapping harder than anyone. A man seeing his daughter realized the strength he always knew was there. Bending, not breaking. Afterward, Sergeant Davis appeared. He walked with the slight limp of a survivor. He met her parents, his testimony echoing across the base. "Your daughter is an extraordinary soldier. She saved my life." A moment of redemption and strategic psychology coming full circle. Sarah Martinez proved that kindness is strength. The cycle of trauma was broken. Informed courage had won the day. This is the Ground Report, reporting on the analytical history of those who lead with disciplined intelligence. Until next time, reporting for the Ground Report.
After graduation, Sarah spent 2 weeks on the family farm. It felt strange to be back. Lifting hay bales didn't compare to carrying a 200-pound man through miles of rough terrain. Her brother Miguel was fascinated. "Was it really as hard as they say?" he asked. "Harder," she admitted, "but also more rewarding than I ever imagined." Everyone in town called her a hero, but Sarah just felt she did what anyone would have done. Still, she knew not everyone could have carried Davis that far. Advanced infantry training was even more brutal. The standards were higher, the stakes greater. But Sarah had proven she could push beyond any limit. During one 10-mile march, her squad complained about their 70-pound packs. Sarah told them, "This is nothing compared to carrying a man. Start moving." Staff Sergeant Jackson noticed. He didn't care about gender, only if she could do the job. "Martinez," he told her, "you definitely can." 6 months later, Sarah received her first assignment. She was headed overseas with the 101st Airborne, ready to put her training to the ultimate test. Before shipping out, a letter arrived from Sergeant Davis. "You changed me," he wrote. "You proved that heart matters more than anything. Stay safe." Overseas, she faced challenges that would have broken her old self. But every time it got hard, she remembered that rainy day and the man she saved. Years later, she'd see that day in basic training as her defining moment. True strength wasn't about size, it was the refusal to give up. Sarah eventually became a drill instructor herself. She pushed her recruits to find their limits and then go beyond them, just as she had. She gave them the tools to overcome their moments, proving once and for all that true strength is found in the spirit that refuses to break.